Yo, Mackey here inside the Target Field press box after the Twins just lost 2 of 3 from the Detroit Tigers. Pitching was a big-time issue the last couple days, especially. Brian Dunsing was hit hard. Cole DeVries gave up an opposite field home run to Miguel Cabrera today. Miguel Cabrera, by the way, is now within striking distance of all 3 American League Triple Crown categories. 30 home runs, just 3 behind Adam Dunn. He's about 8 or 10 points behind Mike Trout for the batting lead. He leads the American League in RBIs. So if you're Cole DeVries, I guess there's no shame in getting rocked by Miguel Cabrera. But I think the last couple days have maybe brought us back to having discussions about just how bad this Twins pitching staff has been. I mentioned Brian Dunsing last night, another rough outing for him, 5 earned runs in 6 innings to that Tigers lineup. And this is a starting staff that came into the middle of the week with a 5.5 ERA. Only the Colorado Rockies have a worse starting staff ERA. And it's a shame because the Twins offense has been scoring about 5 runs a game since the end of April, or since they went through that stretch on the West Coast. Maybe that was more beginning of May, I guess. And so as we look ahead here, there's a lot of storylines, September call-ups, Chris Parmelee. What are the Twins going to do in the offseason? Are they going to spend money in free agency? I think it's important to take a look over the next 6 weeks at what you have if you're the Twins internally with this pitching staff. Scott Diamond, I think, is the one guy who's proven himself trustworthy. He's a guy who goes out there almost every single time, gives you 7 or 8 solid innings. In fact, I believe he has now 6 of the Twins' 10 longest outings of the year. He wouldn't have even been on the radar last year when talking about starting staff. But beyond that, Liam Hendriks at this point, he's really proven all he can at AAA. He's only allowed 1 run over his last 3 starts combined. He's only had 1 bad start in his last 10, 1 home run allowed in his last 10. If given more time in the big leagues, at least this is just me talking, I'm confident that Liam Hendriks is going to be a pretty decent number 3 starter at some point. He's only 23 years old. You can't just say, hey, well, he struggled 2 times earlier this season when called up. So doesn't that just make him sort of a quad A player who dominates AAA and struggles in the big leagues? The answer is no. When you dominate that much in AAA at age 23, it'll translate to some degree. I'm not saying he's going to be an ace, but if he can turn into a guy who's a solid number 3 starter for you, who can give you 7 quality innings, much like Scott Diamond has, I think that's pretty feasible. Kyle Gibson went 3 innings, pretty effective. The velocity has been in the low to mid-90s, I've heard. So Gibson has been working his way back from Tommy John surgery. We really can't depend on him too much in spring training next year, but he might be an option early in the season. Beyond that, I don't see anybody at the high minor league level or on this current major league roster that's ready to step in and be an effective starting pitcher for next season. Let's start with Sam Deduno. I'm not going to say his 3.30-ish ERA is a fluke because the guy obviously has nasty stuff, but especially the breaking stuff. But when you're 29 years old and you've bounced around and you still haven't found full command of your stuff, it's different when you're Liam Hendriks and you're 23 years old and you're working through different things and you're getting to know the big leagues. You're working through AAA. It's excusable if you maybe make a few mistakes here and there, but if you're Sam Deduno and you've walked more batters than you've struck out, and you're 29 years old, you're still walking 6 batters per 9 innings, at some point he's in for a major rude awakening. So not to be Buzz Killington or anything with the way Deduno's been pitching lately, because you got to give him credit, but I think it's, unless he limits the walks, it's going to come crashing down. I would not pencil him in for the starting rotation next year. Cole DeVries, again, hit hard. He's been hit hard 3 of his last 4 starts. Just don't see him as having major league stuff, and I don't think the Twins feel that way either. In fact, right now, if Liam Hendriks were to replace one guy in this rotation, it would either be Brian Dunsing, who could be sent back to the bullpen, or it'd be Cole DeVries, quite frankly. Nick Blackburn, now he has been perhaps the worst pitcher in baseball over the last 12 calendar months. Over a 7.5 ERA going back to last June, but he's under contract for $5.5 million next year. Gardenhire's already said they're going to give him a shot. I don't think you can pencil him in either just because he makes $5.5 million. You don't want to compound one mistake, a bad contract, with another mistake, putting a guy with a 7.5 ERA in the rotation. He's been more effective in the past. I'm talking 08, 09, and the first 15 starts of last year. He's been more effective in the past than most people give him credit for. He's been a workhorse in the past, but he hasn't been anything close to that in the last year. And 25 starts worth is a large enough sample size to probably write him off here at some point soon. Beyond that, I mentioned Brian Dunsing. He's still having trouble getting right-handed batters out. Right-handed batters are hitting about 330 off of him this season, and they had 65 extra base hits off of him last season. In fact, in 2011, right-handed batters were the equivalent of sending a Joey Votto or a Prince Fielder up to the plate every single at-bat. He plays better out of the bullpen. You're going to be going into the offseason with $75 million locked up in payroll. If the payroll is between $90 and $100 million, you're going to have enough money to go out, get a starting pitcher. It's my opinion, if you get 2 Edwin Jackson-type starting pitchers, or just 2 number 3 starter-type pitchers, pair them up with Scott Diamond, hope for the best with Liam Hendriks, maybe Kyle Gibson can give you something, and maybe a pitcher or 2 comes up and surprises, then at least with this offense, an offense that has proven itself to be one of the better units in baseball the last 3 or 4 months, you're giving yourselves a chance in a division where nobody's going to run away with more than about 90 or 93 wins next year. Plus, you've got that 5th wild card in place. But just to summarize, I guess, Scott Diamond is the only pitcher currently on this 25-man roster that I would pencil in, or in his case, probably chisel in stone into next year's rotation. Liam Hendriks and Kyle Gibson, you're crossing your fingers on. Other than that, you've got to go out and work and get this starting pitching staff some enforcements if you're Terry Ryan and this Minnesota Twins front office. Twins on almost a 2-week road trip. I believe it's a 10-game road trip coming up on the West Coast. We'll check back in with you next time they visit Target Field here as we, I guess, get towards State Fair time. Phil Mackey checking out from Target Field. Talk to you soon.